Good morning, friend. Welcome back to Acre Homestead. It is not even 7 a.m. and we are in the kitchen. We've got some pretty big food preservation projects we are going to tackle today. We've got a family dinner we're going to this afternoon, and so I needed to get in here and get these projects started right away. First thing we're going to do is we are going to make roasted tomato soup. I have my first pot of coffee going, so if you can hear that, that's what's going in the background. I love making tomato soup. I always make it the day I want to make it. And I thought, why have I never tried canning it? I have so many tomatoes this year coming out of the garden. I have enough tomatoes that we can go ahead and get this recipe going. This is very similar to my recipe, and it's a canning safe recipe. So I am excited to have this. Now I pulled out my canning cookbook, and my canning cookbook did not have a tomato soup recipe in it. So my mother-in-law is an avid canner, and I asked her if she had any canning cookbooks I could look through. And her canning cookbook, I can link this down below. It's called the All New Book of Canning and Food Preservation, and it's on page 287. It's roasted tomato soup. You can see all those yellow tabs. I've been going through it, and I have a whole list of things I want to make. So I'm really excited that she let me borrow this book. So the first thing we need to do is get our onions sauteing in this big pot. Oh, my coffee's done. So first coffee. This is a pressure canning recipe. And when I make my tomato soup, I always add cream. You cannot can any recipe with dairy products. So the base recipe is very, very similar to the way I typically make sour cream, the way I typically make tomato soup. And so I just know when I open a jar of tomato soup that I will just add some cream into it. Or we'll have it without cream, but that's usually what I like to do. So I've got 4 cups of chopped onions. These are homegrown onions that we harvested when we harvested the potatoes, and I just chopped a bunch of them, and we're gonna use these. So convenience. I harvested a few more onions yesterday from the garden in case I didn't have enough, but I do. We need a total of 8 cups of onions because I am doing more than one batch because I have enough tomatoes. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and preheat the oven because this is a roasted tomato soup. Okay, we've got our onions going. I had exactly what I needed. And now let's go deal with the tomatoes. And I've got my cup of coffee here. Here is my table full of tomatoes. This is not even all of them, but this is what we're gonna be working with today. We've got Roma tomatoes here and some slicing tomatoes, those yellow ones over on the end. I'm gonna mostly use Romas and get going with this recipe. So we do need to weigh the tomatoes, but all these tomatoes still need to be washed. So I've got a colander here, and I'm just gonna start putting these tomatoes in the colander. I'm gonna remove the stems and just leave the stems on the or on the table. And throw in tomatoes. I also have a gallon bag full of cucumbers in the refrigerator I'd like to tackle today, so that's another project on the list. While these tomatoes are roasting, we're gonna tackle those. I've got 2 gallons of green beans in the fridge. We might get to those, and I'm responsible for making a dessert for today's family dinner. So we are gonna make a cookie bar for the family dinner tonight. So I need to get those made too while our tomatoes are roasting. So I'm trying to be efficient in the kitchen and do things because this is gonna take a good half an hour or so to roast. I want to try to have something else going while that's happening. That's why I got the onions going, so that those can be cooking and caramelizing while we wash and chop these tomatoes. When I make tomato soup, I like the onions to be really, really caramelized. And this is gonna take a while because it's a lot of onions and they're frozen, so they're cold. So let's get these tomatoes washed. We do need to weigh these tomatoes. The recipe is written with weight, so I have a scale out, and I want I'm gonna tear my scale so I'm not weighing the bowl, and now we can weigh out our tomatoes. I got some cookie sheets out and a cutting board because we are going to need to slice these tomatoes in half because we're gonna peel the tomatoes, and the recipe is written in a way that I think is gonna make it really easy to peel the tomatoes. And I need, so a quadruple recipe would be 8 times 4, so 32 pounds of tomatoes. Because one recipe calls for 8 pounds and one recipe makes 3 quarts, which I want to make more than that because 1 quart would be perfect for Josh and I for dinner plus 1's worth of lunches. So that's 4 pounds. Okay, so I think a quadruple is going to be good because we'll be able to put a big dent. That's 5 pounds. Okay, so I can show you what one recipe's worth of tomatoes would look like, which would be right there. That is one recipe's worth of tomatoes. That's 8 pounds of tomatoes. Feels like more than that, but I'm not an expert when it comes to, I guess it's 8 pounds, 3 ounces. That's 8 pounds right there. Okay, so let's do 36. Oh, error. Okay, so this scale doesn't go that high. Okay, so 10 pounds here. So I'm just gonna take these tomatoes, and I guess I'll do it in 10-pound increments. We got a couple stems we wanna get out. So that'll be easy to remember. So we need 10. Okay, so let's measure out another 10 pounds. Oh, it looks like I'm gonna have to wash a bunch more tomatoes, which is good. That means we're gonna go through a lot of tomatoes today. I think I wanna go ahead and process these 10 tomatoes and get these in the oven roasting while we continue to wash and prep the tomatoes. So the way the recipe is written is we're gonna take our tomatoes, and I need to grab a knife, and we're going to cut them in half. So we might have to do this in a couple batches because I don't have enough cookie sheets to fit 32 pounds of tomatoes. By cutting them in half and having them roast in the oven like this, what's gonna happen is the top of the tomato skin is gonna get really charred, and I think it's gonna be really easy to peel the tomatoes once they cool because I'll just be able to pull them off like that, I believe. I'm gonna try to squish as many on one baking sheet as I can. So not only are we doing this roasted tomato soup recipe, which is phenomenal, I'm excited to share this recipe with you, but today on this day, as I'm looking through the book, I find a roasted marinara sauce, and we end up doing that too. So that was not originally in my plan to do 2 big tomato projects on this day, but we power through and we get it done, and both of these recipes are new favorite recipes for me. Something about the roasting the tomatoes concentrates the flavor, and just it's outstanding. What made me want to find these roasted tomato recipes is we made together the roasted pizza sauce, and that was so good. And so I've just been kind of on this roasted tomato recipe kick lately, or at least I guess that's probably the theme of 2023's tomato harvest and preservation, but it is so good. Now, as I'm doing this project on this day, I'm kind of thinking through my next year's garden. I have gotten more tomatoes than I have been able to handle this year, and so I ended up gifting quite a few tomatoes to my mother-in-law so she could do some canning projects, and I've been able to gift tomatoes to my friends and family for fresh eating. And so it's been really cool that I've been able to supplement their kind of grocery bill with some of these fresh produce items that have been coming out of the garden. But it had me thinking what my plan is for next year, and I think I'm going to be a lot more selective on what varieties of tomatoes I plant. I planted so many different varieties, and some of them didn't do super great and some did really, really well. But I find myself when I'm wanting to do food preservation projects with them, I want Roma tomatoes. So I think I'm going to plant mostly Roma tomatoes, and then I want to plant some Oxheart tomatoes because those are a slicing tomato that are really dense, and Dr. Witchy's and German stripe. I think that's going to be a big portion of next year's garden. I was just looking back at the recipe to see what we needed to do next, and they have a roasted tomato marinara sauce in this book, which is not in my other book, so I think we're gonna make that too. And another thing I found in here is a recipe for Worcestershire sauce. Not today, but I think I'm gonna have to try that. And there's 3 different mustards I wanna try in here. I've been wanting to make mustard. I used to make mustard all the time. It's been years since I've done it. And there's a bunch of meals in a jar in this book. So I might have to get this book for myself because there is a ton of good recipes in here. So I was rereading my recipe to see if I needed to oil my tomatoes before I threw them in the oven. It just says season them with salt and pepper and then roast them at 375 for 45 minutes. I have my oven set at 425, and so we won't have to roast them quite as long just because I'm gonna roast them a lot hotter. Okay, so salt and pepper, and then into the oven. And our onions are already smelling incredible. And I'm using a non-iodized salt. I have Redmond Real Salt, which I can link down below for you. I do have a discount code for them. It's a salt that is mined in Utah. So into the oven they go. We have this oven set. Now we're gonna rinse and repeat that process till we have a total of 32 pounds. While I'm starting to continue to wash these tomatoes and process these tomatoes, I decided I am going to do that roasted marinara sauce today. I'm in the kitchen dealing with tomatoes. Let's go ahead and just tackle that project as well. And this is what had me thinking about the varieties of tomatoes I'm gonna plant next year. So the recipe for this tomato soup called for Roma tomatoes, but you don't have to use Roma tomatoes. The reason it calls for that is because they're a paste tomato and they have less water content. But because I decided I want to do the marinara sauce, I didn't have enough Roma tomatoes to do the tomato soup and the marinara sauce exclusively in paste tomatoes. So instead of using my slicing tomatoes for the marinara sauce, I thought I'm going to use the slicing tomatoes in the soup because I don't need the soup quite as thick as I would like my marinara sauce. So then I grab a bunch of these slicing tomatoes and I'm going to weigh them out just like I weighed out the Romas, and we're going to keep going. Now, I forgot to do a step when I was doing the first part of the tomatoes. It's early, the coffee had not kicked in yet, and I realized I forgot to de-seed the tomatoes. The recipe says to squeeze out the seeds and the excess juice like this, and so I end up doing that for the rest of the tomatoes that we end up processing before they go into the oven. But I end up still de-seeding the tomatoes that are already in the oven right now, but I do it after they come out of the oven. So that was just a little bit of an oopsie. We're able to fix our mistake, but for the rest of them, it's definitely easier to squeeze the tomato seeds out before you get them in the oven. So because I want to try to get all of these roasted, I'm using all my different pans that I have. This is one of my roasters. I'm going to get these tomatoes in the roaster to roast, and these tomatoes are still for the tomato soup. I have yet to start weighing out the tomatoes for the marinara sauce. And so this is why I'm thinking next year I want to grow more Roma tomatoes and less varieties of slicers. I want to just grow the slicers that I love, maybe try a few new ones, and then focus morely on Roma tomatoes. Roma tomatoes are so prolific for me. The last few years I have grown them, I'm always surprised by how many tomatoes you can get for few plants. Since I decided I wanted to make that roasted marinara sauce, I needed to go grab some more tomatoes. So I went out and I just harvested a bunch more tomatoes and onions for this next recipe we're gonna make as well. I need to measure out 4 more pounds of tomatoes for my tomato soup, and I need 20 pounds total for the marinara sauce, which I think between what I have on the table and this will get us to that. I want to use almost only plum tomatoes for the marinara sauce. That's why I have switched to using some of these slicing tomatoes for the tomato soup. So this is 10 pounds to make us at 30 pounds total for the soup. I need 2 more pounds, and I think that might be that right there. Let's see if this gets us to that. Once I measure out the 32 pounds that I need for the tomato soup, I'm gonna go ahead and de-seed them and get them ready to go in the oven, and then I can measure out what I need for the marinara sauce. So this is just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Slice the tomatoes, squeeze out the seeds, get them in the oven with some salt and pepper, and I'm checking the onions on the stove. If I don't have enough tomatoes to make the roasted marinara, then I won't make it today. I'm hoping I do, because I would like to get these roasted projects kind of started and finished. This is exactly what I was looking for. I'm really excited that I found the roasted tomato marinara recipe, because I was thinking that's kind of what I wanted to do if I was going to make a marinara. The first time I made a marinara and canned it, I did not really like it. So I'm excited to try this recipe, and I'm not going to double it or anything. I'm just going to make it the way it says, and I think I'm gonna like it. If it's anything like the roasted pizza sauce we made, which Josh and I have already eaten 2 of those containers, I might have to make more of that, I don't know. But I'm excited to try this roasted marinara sauce. But if I don't have enough tomatoes today, then I'll wait until I have enough tomatoes to do it, because I definitely want to make that. All right, we got all of this de-seeded. That's a lot of seeds that we were able to get out. It's not gonna end up in our final soup. Okay, that peel just came right off. I think I want them to get oh yeah, you see that? The peels are coming right off. I think I want them to get a little bit more color. So for just about 5 more minutes, I'm gonna see if I can measure out 20 pounds of tomatoes for a marinara sauce. I was looking through all the recipes in that cookbook, and almost all of them for tomato recipes state to do it this way, where you roast them to remove the seeds. And I think that's brilliant, because 1, you don't have a big pot of boiling water, and 2, you're kind of concentrating the flavor and getting the skins ready to remove all at the same time. So it's kind of just a unique approach that this cookbook takes to removing the peels from the tomatoes. I think we're gonna be able to get 20 pounds out of this. Some of these tomatoes aren't fully ripe yet, so I'm just trying to pick the ones that are fully ripe. And you know what? I guess I could cut the recipe in half a little bit, or by 1/4. I can't speak. It's early. My second cup of coffee, I haven't had my second cup of coffee yet. I could reduce it by 1/4 if I need to. Ooh, that one's not a good tomato. But these should be done. Oh yeah, nice and brown. Now I have to be careful when I remove this, because there's liquid and I don't want to spill it on myself. I want to let this cool just a little bit so that it's, oh, you see how easy those come off? Just so that it's a little bit safer when I remove these skins, but they're coming off so easily. I have not washed these ones yet, but I just wanted to see how many pounds I have here and how close we are to our 20 pounds. I did add 1 Dr. Witchy's, and I have 6.8. So I need to grab just a few more pounds. I think I can make it. I have a couple frozen tomatoes, because the ones on the count table are not quite right. 7.5, 8, and that is perfect. The tomatoes in that big bowl are the pre-measured tomatoes that I have for the marinara sauce. So with that bowl and these ones I just measured, and I'm gonna go wash, we now have our total of 20 pounds we need for the marinara sauce. I'm gonna also pull out this pan of roasted tomatoes for the soup, and I am going to start the process of removing the peels It definitely helped if you let them cool down a little bit. The skins just pop right off and it is so easy. I do need to go through the effort of also not only removing the peels, but I need to remove the majority of the seeds. So I just take a bowl, and the bowl that I put the skins in, and if there's a lot of seeds, I just de-seed them here. It was a lot easier to do this prior to roasting, but if you make the same mistake I did, you can correct your mistake and it's no problem. This is going to lead to a good textured tomato soup in the end. We do end up blending this soup. It becomes a smooth soup, but I didn't want all these seeds in there. So now I'm going to take the juice, because this juice has a lot of good flavor and I want this in my soup. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to strain this through a strainer, and I'm going to put this into the soup. But before I do that, I figured let's go ahead and not have this cookie sheet be idle. Let's get the rest of the tomatoes on here for the soup and get these roasted in the oven. I increased the temperature in the roasting time from 375, like the recipe called for, to 425, because that just made the roasting process happen quicker. So we're going to get our nice de-seeded tomatoes into our soup with our onions, and then I'm going to strain the seeds with this colander. For a second there, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to pour that in there. That would have been a disaster, but I did not do that. We end up straining it. And then I take a spatula and I push the yummy concentrated roasted juice through the sieve, and we remove a ton of seeds. I am so glad I went through the effort of doing this, because this is going to lead to a better quality texture soup in the end. So here you're going to see just how many seeds we were able to remove by doing this step. No regrets here at all. Before we add any more ingredients, I want to add the white wine. It calls for 1 cup for 1 batch, and I am doing, that's perfect. I had a little bit of wine in my fridge, plus this bottle equals 4 cups. I'm gonna add this. I was supposed to add this before I added any tomatoes. Oh, I don't wanna dirty another dish. I've got this one. I've only added a few of the tomatoes, so what I want to do is add this so that it can cook and reduce and cook off the alcohol. I'm going to let this reduce by half, and then we'll add some more of the other ingredients. I don't know if you can skip the wine in this recipe. I'm going to turn the heat up and get this really cooking, and we're going to cook out the alcohol. Alcohol is not stable at hot temperatures. I've got all of my tomatoes weighed out for the marinara sauce. Now I need to do the same thing where I go through and I remove the seeds and get them lined out on the cookie sheet. I don't want to put any of these tomatoes into the oven until I have all my tomatoes out of the oven for my soup, because I don't want to mix up the quantities of tomatoes for the different recipes. So I'm just going to take a second. I've got all of these tomatoes plus all of these. I can't de-seed the 4 frozen tomatoes I have, so those ones I will just do once they come out of the oven. If you have sensitive hands, it might not hurt to put some gloves on during this, because the tomatoes are acidic and it could start to bother your hands a little bit. I should probably take a second and have a few sips of my coffee. I haven't even finished my first one yet. We're making good time though. I noticed something really interesting. Depending on how you cut the tomato, at least Roma tomatoes, makes it either easier or harder to take the seeds out. So when I cut them this way, there's a membrane that's completely covering the seeds, and that's when they squirt the tomato juice at me when I try to get the seeds out. So I have to be really careful, but it's a lot easier like this because the seeds are exposed. So let me show you. There is a natural kind of ridge on Roma tomatoes right there, you can see. So if you run your knife through that natural ridge, which seems like the natural thing to do. You can't get access to the tomato seeds as well, but if you run it opposite to that natural ridge, it opens up the tomato and makes it a lot easier to take the seeds out. See how easy that is? So that is something that I just noticed. So it's kind of counter to what you would think to open up the tomato so that it's really easy to remove those seeds. So let me show you one more time. There is a natural ridge right here. So if I cut there, I'm not going to be able to remove the seeds as easily. So you run it opposite to that. And there you go. We are making great progress. We officially have all the tomatoes out of the oven for the tomato soup. And then I've kind of just taken a second to refresh the kitchen so that we can start the marinara. I have one of the roaster pans worth of tomatoes in the oven for the marinara. All the tomatoes are prepped for the marinara sauce, and now we need to work on some of the other vegetables for the marinara sauce. Just washed my cutting board because it was covered in tomatoes. We still need our compost bowl. It's getting very, very full. We are gonna dice up the onions for the marinara sauce, and I've got to check how many onions we need. Yesterday, I harvested a bunch of onions from the garden, the ones that were ready, and I got them washed already. I did that last night, so I don't need to do that today. So we can just chop them. Oven roasted marinara, and in this book, it's on page 204. Oh, we only need, for 20 pounds of tomatoes, we need 1.5 cups of onions chopped, about 2 medium-sized onions. Both of these recipes that we're working with for tomatoes, they both need garlic, but I already have the garlic already chopped and ready to go, so I don't need to chop any garlic or peel any garlic. This is a water bath canning recipe, so for sure, I cannot play around with the quantities of ingredients when it comes to the onions versus the tomatoes. I need to follow that recipe to the T. I had already used all the onion that I had pre-chopped earlier for the soup. That's why I needed to pull these onions out of the garden and get these diced up. It only took a minute. Now I'm going to finish peeling all the tomatoes that are for the soup. And then once we have all of these tomatoes peeled, we've got everything for the soup basically ready to go. There's a couple more ingredients, but nothing that has to really be prepped. I got all the tomatoes peeled for the soup, but before I add them to this big pot, I want to blend up the onions because I want a smooth tomato soup, and I figured it'd be easier to blend up the onions. I'll blend all of it together at the end, but I figured it'd be easier to at least get the onions blended up when there was a smaller quantity in the actual pot itself. So I have my really high-powered hand blender, and I'm gonna just blend the whole thing up. I'm gonna get this blended really smooth, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pour the rest of the tomatoes that we got ready for the soup in here. And now that all the tomatoes for the soup that were measured out and prepped are in that pot, before I finish that soup, I figured we need to get the marinara sauce tomatoes roasting. And I was just waiting for these cookie sheets and the roaster pan so we could get these into the oven. So the rest of the tomatoes that have not been roasted yet are the ones for the marinara sauce. So I'm gonna lay them skin sides up so that they can easily get roasted and I can remove the skins just exactly the same as we did with the soup tomatoes. So in the oven they go, and then we can put our attention back to our soup. This has been quite the morning. I definitely was not expecting to do this many tomatoes, but I figured I already have all of these dishes dirty. It's going to be more efficient in the long run if I am able to kind of push through and get more done on this day than less, and I'm really grateful we were able to do it. It's time to add our chicken broth to our soup. We need 4 cups per recipe, so I'm going to put 4 of my home canned broth. We are almost done with this recipe. Now we're going to add some of our frozen garlic pucks, and these are just going to cook as it cooks, or melt, I should say. And then we need to taste it once all of that has combined and adjust for seasonings after we add a bunch of basil that I harvested yesterday. And some of it looks like it turned brown, so I'm going to pick through and only put the really beautiful stuff in there. All right, there's my beautiful basil. I'm gonna put that in there. And I did not quite have enough because there was some brown stuff. So I'm gonna put some of my freeze-dried basil in here to make up the difference. Now I'm gonna go ahead and blend the basil in. I've yet again cleaned and kind of reset my kitchen. We've got the marinara sauce roasting. I turned on my dishwasher to get some jars cleaned. Our tomato soup needs to just simmer and marry all the flavors and cook. So while I'm waiting for the tomatoes to roast for the marinara sauce, I went ahead and I got a pressure canner on the stove. My mother-in-law is letting me use her pressure canner today, so I can use 2 today and get things going faster. But because we're gonna pressure can this soup and it's gonna be hot, I need to warm up the water in the pressure canner. So I have that warming. But now we're gonna make our pickles. I just washed up a bunch of cucumbers, and we're gonna make a refrigerator pickle, so we're not gonna can these, but we do need to make the brine. Because we are making refrigerator pickles, I can be creative with the recipe. I'm gonna do 3 parts vinegar, so I have 3 cups of vinegar in there to 1 part water. There's a restaurant that is north of me that I think has the best pickles, and they're very, very tart. So I'm kind of going off that and trying to mimic that recipe. So I just added salt. I'm gonna add some of my freeze-dried garlic and some of my freeze-dried dill just to reconstitute it in that vinegar water solution. And I think that's the only ingredients I'm going to use. I'm gonna make them pretty dilly. And I'm just heating this up so that the salt dissolves. I should probably give this a taste test. This already has delicious, I can already taste the garlic and the dill. It's a very clean flavor because I don't have a bunch of other ingredients. I want it to look, I just found on Taste of Home a random quick pickle recipe. This recipe has sugar in it. I don't think I'm gonna add sugar. I think I want it really salty, garlicky, and vinegary. All right. I only have 1 jalapeno in the house from the garden, so I think I'm gonna go run out in the garden and grab 2 more. It is cooler outside than it is in my house. Oh, it's starting to feel like fall out here. It rained yesterday, which was incredible, and my house is very warm right now because of all the steam. Okay, let's get 2 peppers and then we'll head back inside and get these projects done. My original plan for preservation did not include making pickles or cucumber pickles this year from the garden cucumbers. My plan was to freeze dry them for tzatziki sauce this winter and to eat a bunch of them fresh. But these cucumber plants are producing
a tremendous amount. So I've gifted a lot of them. We've eaten a ton of cucumber salads, but I have enough to play around and experiment. And so I thought I'm going to attempt to recreate the pickles from the restaurant that I enjoy, their homemade pickles. And I also like those fresh refrigerator pickles from Costco. If you've ever gotten those are really delicious. And so I thought I've got enough cucumbers to try it. And if we don't end up liking it, I'm only making a few quarts. We end up really enjoying these pickles. We ate a few actually right away after I made them. When you make refrigerator pickles, you're supposed to let them sit in the refrigerator for a little bit before you enjoy them. But even Josh enjoyed them, which was kind of funny because I didn't think he really liked cucumber pickles. I know he loves other pickled vegetables, but whenever we go out, I always eat his pickle. And I guess it's more that he knows that I enjoy them more than he does. So he always lets me have his pickle. But he really enjoyed these. And these turned out really, really well. Now, these are very, very tart because it's a 3-to-1 ratio of vinegar to water. So if you don't like that tart, you can kind of do a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part water to 1 part vinegar. So I also sliced up some onions, and now I'm going to pour the brine over top of the pickles.
I was able to get 3.5 pints. These need to sit in the refrigerator for about a week to marinate, and then they will be ready to go. I'm going to put my leak-proof lids on the top, and those are our pickles. So I'm excited about that. That will probably be enough pickles for Josh and I. So the rest of the cucumbers that come in from the garden, we'll probably just eat fresh in cucumber salads and things of that nature. I want to give the tomato soup a taste test because we can start jarring this up. Wow, that is really good. I think it does need a little bit more salt and pepper because we salted the top of the tomatoes. I didn't think that made total sense because we took the skins off. And so I thought it would probably need some more salt and pepper. And Josh and I like a tomato bisque. So when I open one of these jars, I'll add cream. That's what makes a tomato bisque, which will add sweetness. Because right now, I think if I wasn't gonna add cream, it could do with just maybe like a 1/4 cup of sugar. But I don't think I wanna add that because we will add cream when I open the jar. All right, I'm gonna give it another taste test. I got a new spoon out. That is really good. That is really, really good. Okay, this is ready to be jarred up. And then I think our tomatoes, I got the tomatoes out of this oven for our marinara. I wanna get these out. Yeah, these are done too. And I wanna get the ovens turned off to see if I can cool this kitchen down a little bit because it is very warm in here. And balmy. Josh just said, it's very steamy in here. I want to can some of the tomato soups in pints for single servings, and I'll can some in quarts. I just took these out of the dishwasher, so they're still nice and hot, which is good because our tomato soup is really hot. I'm gonna double stack my canner so I can fit 20 pints in it. And I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Perfect.
I didn't end up canning any quarts of tomato soup. I just did pints, which works out perfect. Josh and I love tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich. It's just a classic combination. It's like peanut butter and jelly, right? It's so good. But I don't make it that often because Josh and I really enjoy soup, but we don't love soup like for lunches the next day. So if I make a whole pot of soup, it is hard to get through the whole pot of soup. So I am so glad that I am making this for the first time because now I can just open a jar and we can have it whenever we want, and we can make just enough for that lunch or for that dinner, and we're not having to try to eat through a whole pot of tomato soup. And I didn't end up doing any quarts because I just did one pressure canner load. We got most of the soup we made into these jars. We ended up having a little bit extra that I'm able to put into the fridge, and we just enjoyed that as soup. And you can double stack a pressure canner. You put this grate over, and then you can put your jars right on top of it. This is a pressure canning recipe. You cannot water bath can this recipe because of the quantity of onions, and so we definitely do not want to deviate from the recipe. So we were able to get all 20 jars in there. I'm going to get the lid on and I'm going to get this canner heating up.
Progress is being made. It is time to finish up the marinara sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of oil to this big pot. I went ahead and rinsed out this pot. So we got the 20 pints of soup in here, which I'm excited about. And then I got 1 more quart. Josh and I will eat this for dinner tomorrow. We're going to a family dinner tonight, so we don't need to have dinner tonight. But I now have a convenient dinner for tomorrow. I've got my pre-measured onions here. So we need to get the onions sauteing. And then we'll get the tomatoes peeled, and then we are going to make our dessert. I'm going to peel these exactly the same way I peeled the other tomatoes. My onions are sauteing, and while those are sauteing, I figured I might as well get the blondie brownies going. I'm going to do the same recipe that I did when we were getting ready to go out of town and I wanted to make blondie brownies, and I completely messed up the recipe. I read 1.5 cups of butter. The recipe calls for 1.5 sticks of butter. I showed you all the recipe and you all caught that, not me. So I want to give this another recipe a go, and we're going to try it with 1.5 sticks of butter, not 1.5 cups of butter. So I'm going to use my mixer here. I knew I was going to make this recipe last night, so I pulled some butter out of the fridge so it would become room temperature. And it's pretty soft because it is very warm in here. It's almost melted. Now we're gonna add 1.5 cups of brown sugar.
You all were so sweet on that video where I completely flopped and basically fried my blondie brownies by adding twice as much sugar as the recipe called for. And you gave me so many yummy blondie brownie recipe ideas. I did want to try this recipe again just to make sure that I could cook it properly. But I do have those recipes saved and they are on the list of things to bake. So this recipe has all of your standard baking ingredients: salt, baking powder, vanilla. I can link this recipe down below. Chocolate chips, and you just mix it all together and get ready to put it into a baking dish. I love making bars when I am busy and I need to make a dessert for something, because it is so much easier than having to make cookies where you have to constantly put things in and out of the oven. And I had put enough things in and out of the oven between getting all of those tomatoes roasted. I needed to give myself something easy, which was these blondie brownies. So now we're going to go back to our marinara sauce and we're going to add garlic because the onions are now cooked down beautifully. We're going to add some red wine, and we do end up adding some lemon juice, but our pressure canner had vented for 10 minutes, so I'm going to put the weight on it. And I'm going to get all of the tomatoes that we roasted and peeled into the pot. Now here in just a second, I'm going to add lemon juice, and that is everything for the marinara sauce. It just needs to cook down, get nice and thick, and I'll blend it up smooth. This is by far the best marinara sauce I have ever made to can. It was absolutely phenomenal. The last marinara sauce I made, I did not peel the tomatoes, which is not recommended, and that was not a big deal. I do peel all my tomatoes now when I can them because you get a better texture, but I added way too many herbs last time, and this was a more simple flavor, but intense and tomatoey and so good. So I'm really glad I made this recipe.
I also think our marinara sauce is done. It's nice and thick. You can see how it's kind of leaving a trail behind it. I've already set the timer for the pressure canning, so I think we can go ahead and get this marinara jarred up. This is by far the best marinara I have ever made. It's noisy because the pressure canner is noisy. I am in love with this recipe. So good. I did add about 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper just to add a little bit of heat to it, but so good. I will make that recipe again. So I need to use this pot for water bath canning. I have gotten the dishwasher going and my canner. That's why it's a little loud in here. So I'm gonna get these jarred up. And then I'm gonna get this pot on the stove to start warming up because this sauce is hot. And so I'm gonna need the water hot. This sauce, I can't tell you how good it is. It's so good. I'm so happy with it. I'm loving this technique. It is a lot of work, but canning tomatoes in any capacity is a lot of work. But I'm finding the flavor of all these roasted tomato recipes is just better. It's so good. So I want some quarts and some pints.
When I first started canning, I didn't peel my tomatoes because canning tomatoes is a lot of work. It is pretty labor intensive. I would just blend up the peels into the sauce, and I did that for a long time. And I think it's because I needed an easy barrier to entry. I needed it to not be difficult. And the longer I'm doing it, the more I want the product that I put into the jar to be the absolute best product possible. Whether you peel your tomatoes or you don't peel your tomatoes, canning tomatoes is a lot of work. And I want, when I open the jar of whatever I'm making, I want it to be the best quality it can be. I want to be so excited to open that jar and enjoy it. Not only is it a lot of work here to can these tomatoes, but a lot of work went into growing the tomatoes. Here I'm getting the water warming up so we can water bath can them. But even if you don't grow your own tomatoes, it can be a lot of work to source the tomatoes and take time out of your day to do this. And so now I take the time to peel it and try to have the best quality product as possible. And that is what is recommended. All recipes that I have ever looked at always say peel the tomatoes, and so that is what I do now. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can blanch them and put them in cold water and peel the tomatoes. You can run them through a sauce master. You can do what I did today and roast them and peel them. I don't know if there's one way that's easier or not. I think it just depends on what product you want and how you want to go about doing it. I'm kind of excited that I now know how to do all three methods so that, depending on my mood, I can decide, or the recipe, which way I want to do on that particular day for that recipe.
Into the canner they go. We have 6 minutes left on the pressure canner, and we haven't even started the water bath canner yet. I got the kitchen mostly clean. I need to sweep and mop, but we got a total of 4 quarts of marinara sauce and 20 pints of soup. Fantastic. We also got 2.5 quarts of pickle spears, and I redeemed myself. These blondies look fantastic. I can't wait to bring them to dinner tonight so we can enjoy them. I will link this recipe down below if you want to go make yourself what appears to be some delicious blondies. I think they're going to taste great. Just don't double the butter. I will show you what this looks like coming out of the canner. If you want to try canning yourself, or you want to grab yourself this cookbook, because we are going to be cooking our way through it. I think I'm gonna have to order my own cookbook because like I said, I flipped through and there's about 10 different recipes that have tabs on them that I am going to be making. Some of them are meals in a jar, some of them are condiments, and some of them are convenience items like soup and marinara sauce. So friend, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. If you're new, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, because we are still in the depths of food preservation season. If you enjoyed this, there will be a lot more where this came from. And then once we're out of preservation, it's gonna be the holidays, and I cannot wait for the holidays. So friend, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. I can pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.